Hi, this is Wayne Johnson with Anglers Habitat here in Caldwell, Idaho. You can find us at www.anglershabitat.com, or you can give us a call at 208-454-8188. Or if you're visiting our website and you want to get to us quick, which we find a lot of people are wanting to do that lately, you can check us on the live chat. Today we have a special guest here, and we're going to talk with Steve Vance about spey fishing and fishing in general. Steve has been a great customer of ours and just a good friend for a while, and lending us his expertise in a number of different areas. He's a great rod builder. In fact, this rod in front of us he has built from a rain shadow blank Spey rod. And let me see, it's a 13-foot 7-weight.
Yes, sir, it is.
Anyway, Steve, thank you for coming by
Not a problem,
today.
Wayne. Not a problem
And
at all.
we're going to talk about spey fishing, and I'm going to let Steve kind of take it from here, and we will go from there.
Alrighty.
Okay.
So one thing I wanted to touch base on is that a lot of people wonder what spey fishing is all about that don't do it. They wonder because they see these big, giant, long casts, and they're thinking, well, you're not going to be able to set the hook that far, or you're not going to be able to do this or that. Well, the main purpose of spey fishing, especially here in Idaho and especially in Oregon and Washington, is the fact that you don't have the luxury of having a back cast. So you have to have some other avenue to get your line out there into the spot, into the bucket where the fish is sitting, or where the pot of fish is running, or wherever the case may be. And that's one of the biggest issues that people aren't understanding with spey fishing, and that's part of where I call it the war between single hand and spey guys comes from, because they think we're snobs and we think they're idiots, but that's not really what it's all about. And we just say that in playing fun. It's not anything serious, but one thing that is a big deal when you're spey fishing is river etiquette.
Right.
Low holing somebody when you're spey fishing is not okay. Just like when you would low hole somebody when they're single hand fishing, it's not okay. Mm-hmm. One thing that I would stress to a lot of single hand guys is that you're going to catch 100 fish before we catch one on a spey rod. Those are the numbers we figured out.
Wow.
A couple good buddies of mine, we've sat down and ran the numbers between what we used to do and the fish we catch now on a spey rod, and you would literally catch in between 75 and 100 fish before you'd catch one on a spey rod.
Wow.
So that being said, river etiquette is huge. If you ask a spey fisherman if you can fish above him, that's fine if you're a single hand guy, or if you're a spey guy, because he's fishing the run. We would give a single hand guy the same exact courtesy. We would either go upstream or downstream, but we would always ask. Asking is one of the biggest respect factors on the river, as I'm sure you all know, and that's something to always bear in mind.
Definitely.
Any questions,
Definitely.
sir?
Well, I know, first of all, I will confess that I do not have a lot of experience in spey fishing. In fact, I've never used a spey rod before, so this is going to be educational for me as well. A few things that I do know about spey, and please correct me, Steve, is that one nice advantage over spey fishing, and when guys are talking to me about single-handed rods to fish, I always encourage them to go with a longer rod. There's a couple reasons for that. The main reason is you can cover a lot more water.
Absolutely.
And when you put a spey rod in your hand and you're fishing a big river like the Salmon River in Riggins, or the Deschutes, or any of these big waters that are big water, you can get that distance and you can get to pods of fish that you just normally can't get to. On a single-handed rod, I will tell them not only to go with a longer rod because you can get better distance, but I can get away with a lighter rod. I do not want to cast a heavy rod all day. My arm's worn out, it's 55 years old, and casting a heavy rod just does not do me well. So I try to get away the lightest rod I can. If I can take the fight and distribute that fight throughout a longer piece, you can use a lighter rod. So I like doing that. So now, Steve, when you're using a spey rod and you're trying to get to that that little more distance there, you don't have to back cast.
No,
you just
you
do everything in front
absolutely
of you.
One thing that a lot of people, and you're correct with the length, actually, especially on big water when most of the fish are running especially here in Idaho, in the winter time, it's very cold. So when you're spey fishing, a long belly line comes in particularly helpfully because you're not having to clear ice out of your guides because you're not really stripping much line in and out. You're doing huge sea spays. You're casting 75, 80 feet of line without ever pulling anything in or letting anything out.
You know, also, I know an incredible distance in cast. I'm not real sure what the world record is for single-handed casting, but if you can get out 100 feet, you're very
well.
accomplished. I mean, that's just beyond the realm of possibility for me. When I get out a full line, which is the general line is 90 feet, I've accomplished something. And it's not something I try to do, by the way. It's just for fun, I'll do it once in a while. Hey, see what I can do. But with a spey rod, you can get out the distance of a football field. So maybe not. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I know it's two to three times longer than you can on a single-handed rod. Just to give you an idea of the distance that you can carry. Get to. Now, Steve, where do you like to spey fish? Where are some of the waters that you find that this is just a real joy to do?
I like fishing the Deschutes because it's tricky wading. I'm kind of I wouldn't say a wading enthusiast, but I like a challenge, which is also why I spey fish, because I like a challenge.
Right.
When it comes to a fishable territory, I would say a lot of the rivers in Washington, the southwestern Washington, are a good place to start. There's always good fish in there. The Clearwater is epic. It's just when the fish are in, they're big, they're ferocious. A lot of times they'll be off the bite and you won't catch anything all day. But when you have that one epic day that you'll never forget for the rest of your life, you'll want to go back every year.
We call that the home run day.
Absolutely.
The grand slam.
Absolutely.
I've had a few of those days, but I know they're few and far between. But generally, when I go steelhead fishing, I always catch steelhead. But I remember those days when you just can't keep the fish off your line, and it is truly exciting. It makes the day really worth the while. And what are some of the flies we use and some of the rigs? Now on this one here, I see that we put a reel on here, so let's talk a little bit about lines.
Okay, this rod is a 13-foot 7-weight, and what I actually designed this rod to do was cast Skagit heads. I can also cast Scandi heads with it, but it's mainly designed, with guide spacings of my own, and of course the different cork with the compressed rubberized. It's mainly meant for a Skagit head with a sink tip. Because of the fact that that's one of the most effective ways here in Idaho to fish. There's other places like the Grand Ronde on the Deschutes is a great place for a Scandinavian head, which is a full floating head, for that to be very, very key. Even on rivers such as the Clearwater and the Salmon, you can still get steelhead to take topwater.
Right.
You can still have that happen. A lot of people don't believe me, and it's happened. I've done it.
Yep. Well, you know what? Interesting you mentioned that. Last year I had the opportunity to go to the Grand Ronde for the first time, and unfortunately this year I wasn't able to go. But boy, what just a pleasure I had on that river. We caught myself and a good friend of mine in a little over a day and a half. We hooked and landed probably 16 fish. We hooked about 30 fish, so it was amazing. But one thing I did notice was all of a sudden the October caddis were out, and I noticed those fish were coming up, and I was thinking, what a fool not to bring any October caddis. I've never caught a steelhead on top, and it would have been a great experience to do that, and that would have been my time to do that. Now, you don't have to use a precise October caddis. You can use a large stimulator. We've got what we call Norm Wood Special, which looks a lot like an October caddis. As long as you get the fish's attention, cast a nice shadow on the water, and you will be in there. Now, a typical spey line is about 120 foot long.
It's about 120 to 135 feet long if you're buying the whole line.
Okay.
What I do is I buy a shooting line, which Rio Slick Shooter. There's a few other ones that are pretty good on the market today. And I attach I tie a big loop in my running line, and then I attach my head. That way I can change out heads instead of having to change out spools or reels.
Nice. That's a good point too. Steve makes is that many of your spade lines you can buy with tips, interchangeable tips. They have a welded loop-to-loop system. I really encourage you to do that. Whenever I'm going to water I'm unfamiliar with, and the water levels can change abruptly, I always like to bring interchangeable tips. And interchangeable tips you'll usually have an intermediate, which is 1 to 2 inches per second, a type 3, a type 6, sometimes a type 8, and different sink rates, and get you down where the fish are going to be. One time I went to Hales Canyon and I got there, I couldn't believe the water I was facing. And I had a type 8 sink tip with me, and I put it on there. Second cast, I caught a nice steelhead. But I was fishing in 15 foot of water, and the water was smoking. And I need to get down fast, so I don't like putting the weight on my leader because I'm always worried about my leader coming back and hitting my rod and possibly doing damage. And I don't like casting a lot of hardware anyway, so if I can get my application taken care of with the line, that's what I'm going to do. So have you ever tried spey fishing? We've got some videos on YouTube about fishing in Stanley. Mm-hmm. On the Salmon River in the spring, which again I encourage you to try it if you haven't tried it before.
And it's coming up.
And it's coming up next month, by the way. I would say I really watch the weather closely. This year it's going to be a little early, and the reason why I feel that way is because you have a great snowpack. Once that snowpack starts coming off, it's going to blow the river out. Fishing's going to be done. So I'm going to be going early, second week, third week of March. And so, do you try? Are you using this spey rod on the salmon at all?
Absolutely,
Oh,
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that some people have been doing, which I personally disagree with, but it's to each their own, is nymphing with a spey rod. The application is there; you can do it. Is it still a part of the time-honored tradition? No, but if you would like to do it, you're more than welcome. You won't get made fun of. But it's just something that a lot of people don't understand as far as that is another application you can have with a spey rod. And you can also even put an indicator on it if you like, if you have a stout leader where it's not going to get ripped off to your leader.
Right.
But I mean, there's the applications of a spey rod are so vast that a lot of people have no idea.
Yep.
Same with a switch rod, which is also the marrying point between single hand and spey, because you can do literally both.
Well, I know as someone who loves to steelhead fish and has always used longer rods in my steelhead fishing, I think using a spey rod and a switch rod, like you mentioned, Steve, is a great transition for you. We've all made the progression. I started out with a spinning rod as a kid. When I moved to Alaska, I found out it's better to use a bait casting rod, and I went to a bait casting rod, and my rod got longer. Instead of using a 6 or 7 foot rod, all of a sudden now I'm using an 8.5 foot to 9 foot rod. And then I got into fly fishing, and my fly fishing rods have also become longer, especially when I'm steelhead fishing. And I know personally to use a switch rod, even though I've never done that either, but to use it and use it for its application on the Salmon River would just be amazing. There are so many times when you just can't wade to get where you want to get. The river is generally inaccessible by drift boat in the spring. It's much too low, so you're going to be doing everything by wading. And it's a nice way to get to those fish without spooking them.
Absolutely.
And another beautiful thing is, too, is there's so many times you mentioned about putting everything in front of you. The cast is in front of you, everything's in front of you, which, by the way, I love. How many times do you have brush or a cut bank behind you and you can't cast behind you? And that makes it nice. And the longer the rod, if you're going to roll cast, it's so much easier. You have so much more control, more line speed, and you'll get it out there much further. So I encourage you to try it, and I encourage myself too. And this year, when I go to Stanley, I'll definitely break out the switch rod. I think I'll make that first transition to a switch rod.
Absolutely.
And we've got a number of demos here that I could take, and if you're interested in using one of our demos, you can come by and check one out. I don't charge for it.